We had a discussion about the timing. Dina had said that we could report. We didn't necessarily have an opportunity to finalize that request or that suggestion on her part, but we will report and in its entirety, from start to finish, without any editing, present the video as record so that those that could not make it today will have an opportunity to know what we've talked about. So.
Do you want to introduce Emily to everyone?
Yes, of course.
Thanks.
There's some transition within the organization, and so we have made some decisions internally that I will serve as the chief negotiator, and Emily McCann will be joining us from FEA as a bargaining specialist. She will be with us throughout the entirety of the process, and we do not foresee any other further changes at this point.
Okay. We would like to begin, if it's okay, with an overview of our budget and our expenditures from last year to this year. We believe there's a misunderstanding among some of what funds are actually available to the district and which funds are restricted and unrestricted. Merle was contacted by a reporter to go through various numbers, and the numbers weren't correct, so we felt we should have an opportunity to go through where the budget was, where the budget is, and so we're on the same page. Talking apples to apples.
Can I just preface that briefly? I'm not sure where the numbers came from, but I will say that in producing my analysis earlier, there was a fair amount of variation between the final budgeted amendments and the annual financial report, which is normal. I'm not saying that's abnormal. I'm just saying that if there were fuzziness in the numbers, that might be where it was coming from. But I just want to make sure those numbers were right. So that is the budget versus actual for fiscal year 17-18. But please walk us through the budget, but just want to make sure that was right.
As a point of clarification, those numbers do not come from anyone in this bargaining table.
No, I never did say that.
No, he didn't
As
say
a
that.
point of clarification.
Right.
And,
Is this copies of the site plan? Yes, ma'am.
this is, it's like fiscal years.
It is. Oh, here. That's for last year. You can.
There you go. The error you made is you compared the original projection
Mhm.
we adopted in September
Mm-hmm.
to the final expenditures.
That's not an error.
That's an error,
Okay, please explain why.
because we had 9 budget amendments. You cannot compare the beginning budget before it's ever amended
Mhm.
and compare it back to expenditures. That's
Why?
apple and oranges.
Okay, why is that?
Because of the changes during the year, you end the year with, the differences that you show here will not make any sense. The differences at the end of the year will flow into the fund balance, and it makes perfect sense. You can't make any judgment based on the beginning budget compared to actual expenditures. We have grants that come in during the year, we have a lot of different revenue sources
Mhm.
that are not budgeted at the very beginning, that come in during the year, and we
Mhm.
budgeted for it at that time.
Fair enough, but I would say that what's most interesting and relevant about a district summary budget is that it's an aspirational document and a statement of the district's priorities. And I think that it is actually a fair assessment of what the district's public priorities for the expenditure of public resources, to compare it between what you want and what your goals are versus what actually shook out. And so if this is a matter of framing, fine, but that's not an inaccuracy.
Yes, it is.
How so?
The beginning budget right here. Here's the difference, beginning budget, total expenditures, 290,000. The ending budget, total expenditures, 301.6 million, excuse me, 290 million compared to 301.7 million. You can't compare that to the ending expenditures and make any sense of it. It has to be the ending budget compared to the ending expenditures to be able to make sense of those differences.
Okay, I mean, I'm a little confused though. Why does DOE ask for the district summary budget as if it means anything?
That's the beginning budget of the year. At the end of the year, we supply them with the ending budget in our annual financial report.
Yes, but they're required by DOE. Why do they
Yes.
find that information worth asking?
And you'll have to
They
ask
test
DOE
us
that.
for one thing, they want to make sure that we're putting aside the necessary 3%. Just because they ask for
Yeah.
this doesn't mean that this is what you compare to the ending expenditures, because the ending budget is what you compare to the ending expenditures. That's a rational way to do it. This is not rational. That is not a rational comparison,
I think-
because it's not a complete budget.
Okay. Would you say that there's anything to be gained by looking at patterns of budgeting versus spending over time?
Of course.
Okay, well, we've got that information as well.
Okay.
And would you also agree that it's the case that the fund balance actually did very well at the end of the year?
We have said that in the public meetings at least 5 different times.
Okay, then we're in agreement. I think we share the same facts.
We're in agreement, except the information you put out gave a misleading,
The information
that went out to
that
your
went
members.
out, not was put out. I didn't have any old.
Well, I didn't put it out.
Yeah.
But it was went out that I got from the reporter, those numbers are incorrect.
I
The
apologize,
differences.
yeah. But these are correct. I mean, they
No.
seem to be correct.
That's correct.
What
you have
finally
a correct-
shook out.
You have a correct beginning
Mhm.
budget, you have a correct ending expenditure. The differences are don't make sense, because you compare two things that do not connect. This beginning doesn't connect with that ending because it doesn't include changes that occurred, so that you can show these ending balances flowed into the ending fund balance. You can't do that with this. It's impossible. You cannot show that these differences, I will show you these differences flowed into the ending fund balance to the penny.
Of course, that's what we've always
Well,
said
no,
as well.
that's not of course here. That's impossible on this analysis you did. It is
Well-
impossible because it's the beginning budget and the differences are not correct to be able to do that.
Wait, so you're saying the beginning was, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
I'm saying your beginning budget compared to the ending expenditures.
Which is a meaningless difference, you said, but
The
the information
difference is-
itself was correct.
The information's correct. Those are
Yeah.
correct numbers here, those are correct numbers there, but when you
Right.
compare the two, you
It's
don't
not a
have-
meaningful
It's not a
comparison.
meaningful comparison.
Okay, well, I don't think the implication, I mean, again, what I would say, or what I always tell teams, and I'm sure you'd agree, is that the fund balance really tells you the field of play. I mean,
Yes.
what's left over and how you did that year is in the fund balance, and how it grew, how it shrank, whatever, and how it's allocated amongst the different categories. I think we agree about that.
That is true.
Yeah, but, as I said, what's useful about this is it's a record of the district's priorities. And if that wasn't clear from the document, I apologize, but that's how I read those differences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really good.
Go ahead and explain
Okay.
your fund balance.
Let's pass this. Let's pass this around.
Yeah. Makes sense to me.
Okay, this is the comparison of the final budget. And if you want to pencil in, that's after budget amendment number 9. The final budget adopted by the school board on September 11th, compared to the actual expenditures. The differences, I mean, I don't want to go through every single difference, but I do want to go to the bottom line. The total difference between the budget and the actual was $35,900,000. The ending fund balance, or the budgeted fund balance in the final budget was $15,228,498. And I could pass the document around to show you that if you need it to be for evidence. The two of those comes together, you add the $35,900 and the $15,228,000, that's $51,128,766.64. That's our total ending fund balance that we'll report to the Department of Education in our budget. The reserves are $22,571,000, leaving an unreserved fund balance of $28,557,000.
I mean, just a point of clarification, 22 million refers to sort of the unspendable, committed, restricted.
Correct.
That's just the lump sum. Okay.
Yes. Okay, now, I think it's important because I saw in the email that the reporter showed me, there's a perception that $28,557,000 is a slush fund.
Right, where are we looking at?
The unreserved fund balance.
Oh, yeah.
That is an amount that's just sitting out there that's, this particular person referred to it as kind of like a slush fund. So it needs to be understood how we went from $28,557,000 to the budget amount this year of about 11.3 or 11.4 million. And that's what I'm going to do with these sheets, so you'll pass these around. On the top right-hand corner, I begin with the budgeted unreserved fund balance, $28.56 million. The columns inside represent what was taken from that this year that, in essence, is additions to either directly to the schools or indirectly to the schools. So I started with what is certainly directly to the schools, with school monitors. We are paying approximately 40 more, one per school, one per school, that's 1.2 million.
Okay, is that not accounted for in the increase? Oh, sorry, I want to just go through it and I'll ask you questions.
Middle school deans, $25,000, $250,000. These numbers represent thousands and millions. I tried to make it as clear as I could. Okay. Behavior specialists, we added, I think there's 22 of them, 800,000. We increased the salaries for school financial accountants, that's 140,000. And for registrars, that's about 130,000. Computer support techs is 200,000. Paraprofessionals, salary increase is about 510,000. LCTA, we proposed 3 million. The best and brightest for the bonuses to teachers that are guidance counselors, members of the units that are guidance counselors and social, the psychologists, all those folks that are not included in the DOE piece, we're going to pay this about $300,000 cost. We increased student activities by 500,000, and we increased the staffing plan materials and supplies by 500,000. So that comes to 7.73 million. And then the next column, I could have allocated some of this back to the schools, but I honestly didn't have time. So I just, the district-wide Florida retirement system increase is about 500,000. The health insurance increase is about 1.2 million. Other LESPA and salary, 1010 and salary increases are 1.52 million. We increased the emergency reserve by 1 million. We anticipate providing salary increases for administrators. I think it's gonna be like 75 cents per hour. That should be about 400,000, and we had a district, the property casualty insurance increased 430,000. So that's 5.05 million for a total of 12.78 million. When we back that out, we have 15.78 million remaining. We're going to have to do an audit adjustment of 390,000 to take out the fund balance. And we pulled the 4 million out. That's the emergency reserve that we always pull out. So when you pull those things out, we're left with 11.39 million. The ending budgeted unreserved fund balance is 11.33 million, so I've got about a $60,000 difference in miscellaneous net increases within the $300 million budget.
And thank you for this information. I guess my question, just so we can all be looking at the same page. I guess I just wanna make sure, I just wanted to see, that's the difference, that's the new money coming in for 2018-19 for the FEFP. And we've broken it down, oh, of course, yes, sorry. Yes, copies for everybody. Thank you. I guess this is just a graphic representation of it.
Thank you.
My question is, just so I understand the information I received, is this the 7.231 million money, what fiscal, is this for the 18, let me just make sure I understand. So what we just walked through is for fiscal year 18-19, or 19 as you said. Okay. And so my question is the 7.73 million in increased costs over and above what was the new money's coming into Leon? If it is, that's fine, I just wanna be sure I understand.
12.78 million.
So the total cost for all those things? Okay. So, wait, so it's basic, so the increased cost for all of those things will be 12, how much million, how many million?
0.78.
12.78, okay.
It's
That's
on
good
your
enough.
sheet, right?
Well,
It's summarized.
well, no, what I'm asking is, sorry, I was not clear. What I'm asking is for just the school-related increases, there's 7.73 million in increased expenses, which, that's fine, that's happening. My question is, there's also, that document that's in front of you is a representation, or a calculation of new funds coming into Leon
Yes.
from the FEFP. What I wanna make sure I understand is that the 7.73 new money or new expenditures over and above what's coming in over the FEFP, or no, that's just new costs irrespective of funds coming in?
Well,
Your ending fund balance includes.
Well, no, that's,
all the money coming through.
I agree, I must not be expressing myself clearly. So, I'm asking what it means when you say there are school-related increases. I don't disagree that there are. I mean, there are a number of legislative mandates that required you spending more money. My question is what you're reporting just local money regardless of how you're paying for it? Like, this is what we have to pay, this is what we budgeted, doesn't matter where the money's coming from? Or is this a obligation above the new money coming in from the FEFP?
okay, I think I understand what she's asking. Here's how I'm going to try to express what I think I understand she's asking. Every one of these expenditures here
It's just a cost.
are costs that the superintendent, okay, let's take it back. Costs that we are forced to do because of changes in laws, okay? FRS district-wide, 500,000, health insurance increase 1.2, definitely. You could say district-wide salary, casualty, that cost is 430,000. We could have lowered it by accepting more risk. So,
Okay.
but we don't want to do that. The board probably doesn't want to take on more risk there.
That's completely fine,
This does not include the categorical increases such as the security guards and the behavior, the
Mental health
150,000 mental
allocation,
health.
yeah.
This is all above and beyond that.
Okay, so
And
like,
this is coming out of funds
that are
that
low.
are unreserved, 28.56 million, can be used for any purpose. So, what we have done, okay, first of all, the 5.9 million,
Mhm.
after you take out categoricals, is around 3.5 million
Mhm.
of unreserved.
Mhm.
So the way to look at this is, we've put out 12.78 million and we got about a 3.5 million increase from the legislature. These are all increases in the budget, and they will be spent this year.
Certainly.
This will be spent. Well, we have some things that will probably roll forward.
Yeah,
Just about every bit of this is gonna be spent in its entirety.
certainly.
So the fund balance is gonna go down next year.
Okay.
And likely the superintendent is, if he gets the kind of funding we got this year,
Mhm.
3.5 million for, it's not connected to some specific purpose, he's likely gonna have to cut anywhere from 2 to 3 million to be able to produce an ending fund balance that's above 3%.
3% in the unreserved plus unassigned, or what are we talking about here?
Well, we tried to show an unreserved of at least 3%.
Right.
Because assigned gets into all kinds of monies that really shouldn't be touched.
Certainly, well, I mean, purchase orders that are not yet filled, for example,
No,
but.
that's not purchase orders that are not filled.
Assigned
On
is not?
assigned
Oh, committed, that's.
is stuff like, I like to use this example. When people pay to go to football games and basketball games, those student fees, those fees they pay
Mhm.
are part of the assigned fund balance.
Yeah.
I don't ever wanna have to go to the board and say, hey, we've gotta balance our budget on the back of these payments to go to see games. We plow that back into those activities. That's why it's assigned. Now, technically, it can be used to balance the budget, and we can take that money.
Yeah,
But ideally, you want the unreserved, the unassigned to be what is there in cases, in times that are hard.
okay. So, let me make sure, thank you for that information. Can you tell me what else is in the assigned fund balance portion?
You have things like, our after-school fees, the middle schools and elementary schools now both have before and after school. You've got leftover dollars, whether it's, you've got all the fee-based programs, I'm trying to, there's the restricted, which is your state dollars, but, most of it's a fee-based program. We have funds like E-rate, where we get the refunds from the E-rate on the cellular, on the phone lines.
Mhm.
That's in there. You've got your gas tax reimbursement. We have various departments that have things like our fingerprinting department. Theirs is restricted because it has to be spent back on that. It's various different, the majority of it's gonna be your state type dollars, like your textbooks.
I thought unexpended categoricals weren't restricted.
That's what I said. I mean,
Okay, sorry.
I was gonna say that's gonna be over on
Right.
that side. Your assigned is gonna be much smaller than, or it may be about the same as that restricted portion because
Mhm.
of, a lot of it's fee-based stuff, a lot of it's like our emergency we have a transfer that comes from cap outlay. Those
Mhm.
funds have to be restricted because they can only be spent on that, so they're in the assigned portion. Like I said, I've got a list of all of it, if y'all would like a copy of this.
Mhm.
We've been there, done that. Scott knows exactly what I have here. I'm gonna keep a copy for us, and I don't have enough for everybody in here, but if y'all wanna,
Unexpended categoricals still must be spent for that purpose.
Right.
They don't suddenly-
No, I was just, I misunderstood, I think my question was more like what's being assigned where in the fund balance. No argument that a categorical is a categorical is a
Right.
categorical.
and most of that, when the school does a fee-based program, that is strictly for that school. We
Mhm.
don't, we set up a project for it, and it all goes to them. We don't take any type of, funds back from them.
Mhm.
Now, I understand these are our project listings, there may be some that the name of the project may confuse you, but if you ask me, I'll try to explain it to you.
Okay,
But you
so
can
this
see,
is,
this was our ending restricted balances.
oh, this is restricted, not assigned. Okay,
It's
that was my
by- look, when I break it down, this is everything that has to roll forward, that makes up that the 22 million part of it is
Okay.
encumbrances, but it makes up that total balance that we were talking about for the restricted.
Mhm.
We can take the restricted and add it to the encumbrance, they add up to the 22 million. I break it down, this is my working sheet.
Certainly.
So it gives you every project that we roll forward to the school sites. Also in there is about over $1 million that the school sites carry forward with their unexpended flex and subs from the year before. We allow them to roll that forward. This year it was $1,037,000.
They have 1 year to spend that.
You got advanced, but the ones that, I mean, I kind of highlighted the bigger ones just so you can see, like, advanced placement dollars the high schools get. They're rolling
Mhm.
forward over $1 million there. So, all that money goes back to the schools. This is not money that the district can do. No, I'm just trying to explain it to you so you understand what I've got here.
Mhm.
But what I did also is I took it a step further, because when you look at these ending balances where it says like you got $20 million left over in the 5,000 function, well, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that 5,000 function.
Right.
At the beginning of the year, I have to say, just because you need to understand, because when you're saying you're budgeting in your priority areas, there's a lot of stuff that's budgeted in that area
Mhm.
that's not going to be directly expended, like McKay scholarships. We have to budget for that because they take that from us. So you got $2.5 million sitting in that original budget that you say should be a priority for the school. Well, you have to budget for it because they're gonna take that money from us.
And where does the McKay, where do you account for the McKay just point of information, I'm curious.
It's it's in that 5,000 function,
Right, which object?
300 object.
Okay, so it's purchase services, which is also
I just-
where
well, I
charter
just-
schools come from, right?
Right, I
Yeah.
just put it in there because it's gonna go away at the end of, in the middle of the year, because
Certainly.
DOE's gonna take it from us. So where you started out with that $2.5 million budgeted,
Mhm.
that budget is reduced by
Well, yeah.
$2.5 million. So that's
Okay.
where we're saying you can't really compare the beginning budget to the ending actual expenditures, because that budget goes up and down the whole year. Your expenditures fluctuate each month. I mean, so, anyway, just so you're aware of that. But what I did too was, I took like the biggest projects so that you could see, when you see that there's a lot of money left over in any particular category, like the 5,000 function, out of that roll forward of 20, or that ending balance of 20 million, 11.1, give or take, is tied to dollars that are rolling forward, that are restricted, assigned, restricted, however you want to say it,
Okay, can you say
somewhere
that
else.
again?
Okay, on the very top page of what I just passed out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's it says restricted by function. What I did was these projects, I know what function these projects roll forward in because I've been doing this for a really long time.
Certainly.
So what I tried to show you is like, were you showing that 20.6 million is left over there? 11.1 million
Sorry. 11.1 million is rolling forward.
is rolling forward out of that. So you really don't have $20.6 million that's available out of the 5,000 function. You've only got about 8.5, maybe 9 million that would roll forward, that is rolls into that unrestricted fund balance.
So just to be clear, because we use the word rolling forward, 11.1 million is what you would call assigned or reserved.
Right.
Yep.
Specific things, and the difference of approximately 9 million is what will come
Goes
and
into
flow
that
into the
15 million.
28.56
Right,
million unreserved fund balance.
And I tried to do that with the big ones, like 6,400 function. You can see it was showing I thought it probably showed 8, why did it show 800? Well, 637,000, that's tied to, whether it's that digital learning, that's a lot of training in that, and your TEC dollars, those funds, because what the schools don't spend rolls back into the district coffer, and then we reallocate it out, but it's all restricted because that's by statute, we have to set that aside. So the training funds are there, but it
Let's
can
go
only be
slower. Let's go slower. look at this page right here,
Mm-hmm.
on the 6,400 function.
Yep.
Difference there is $831,000. Where's the 6,300?
That's that very first one.
Yeah,
6,300.
I'm looking at 6,300.
Okay, well, let's look at
6,400.
She was
6,400,
talking
sorry.
about 6,400.
Right.
Got it.
Okay, that difference is 765,000. She is saying that,
It's the same number on mine.
Yeah.
excuse me?
It's the same number on mine. I
Yeah.
don't see a difference.
Okay, look at this sheet.
That is why, that's the issue.
You're going to
Okay.
add to the very first.
Yes,
Got it.
that's the point she's trying to make.
Mhm.
In the 6,400 function,
Right.
going across, that difference is $765,000.
Right.
She is showing you that 637,000 of that is tied up with projects that have rolled forward,
Mm-hmm.
that the money must be spent for that purpose. So
Okay.
of that, maybe 100,000 or so would flow into the unreserved. She's just trying to make a point that
Right.
these differences include,
Right, rollover. Yeah.
will they include rollover that's free and clear and rollover that's obligated, that's all.
Okay. And so, again, yeah, differing levels of school board authority needed to approve reallocation from those assigned versus committed. Got it.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it, and especially the work in detail it was. Thank you. Actually, since you brought up rollover and you brought up instructional, can you talk to me about what's going, or, I don't know how to put this. I'm really curious about 5,500.
Right.
Yeah, so I see that, so could you walk us through that? I would love to understand it more.
Go ahead.
It always looks like that 5,000 is large at the beginning of the year.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5,000, well, it's 510.
Yeah,
but
right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
what happens is at the beginning of the year,
Mhm.
because I have 2 people in my department
Right.
that do this.
Right.
Okay, so
Mhm.
for the school sites in particular, because that's where the 5,000 function is, we don't, very, very, very seldom would you see a 5,000 function at a district cost center.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is all in the staffing plan and the funds that we allocate for the schools. So because I only have 2 people in my department, including myself, I'm one of those 2 people,
Right.
that does the budget, and I'm doing a budget for over 100 cost centers.
Mm.
Because I just do the general fund.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm painting a picture of why we do what we do, okay? It's not laziness, it's not wanting to do it, it's because we don't have the staff to do it. And I can't justify asking for somebody just for 3 months out of the year. But what we do is when we allocate particular funds, like with the staffing plan and the schools flex and flex dollars, subs falls in a different category. We put it all into the allocation of 5,510. That's your
Say that again?
5,000, okay, the 5,000.
Mhm.
Okay, when we allocate, when we set up the budget at the beginning of the year, we go in and we allocate the funds, the staffing plan funds for supplies.
Yes.
Okay, all of those go into that 5,000, it's actually 5,100, 510, 50100. We
Talk
put
to me
it
more
in.
about the staffing plan, though, I'm a little confused.
Staffing plan is what we use to allocate funds to the schools. We have a staffing plan that we would have formulas tied to it, so it generates based on their student numbers and the type of students they have, whether they're ESE, ESOL, basic, or vocational. There's a allocation, teacher pupil allocation formula that we use in there to allocate teacher units.
Mhm.
Okay, we don't allocate dollars, we allocate units. They equate to dollars, but a school gets a unit based on, we build in for the class size amendment in there because we have to meet class size. So the allocation is tied very close to, like for elementary schools, we use a 18 or 19 allocation per student. Like, so for every 18 students, they get a teacher. Every
3 is 18.
Right.
Okay.
So, and then middle schools, 4 through 8's a different allocation, and high school's a different allocation. So what we do is we allocate based on that, so that's how they get their teacher units. So
Right.
all those teacher units, what we end up doing, we work with the schools individually,
Mhm.
but they're allocated, like you'll see the 5,100.
Right, for flowers,
Looks-
yeah.
And it'll look large too, that, because sometimes we budgeted to different, they convert those to different things, but we're not
Sure,
gonna
sure,
get
yeah,
there.
we're
We're
not
getting too
there
much in the
today. Yeah.
weeds there.
Yeah. Mhm.
So then when it comes to their supply budget,
Mm-hmm.
what we do is because I don't know, don't quote me on this, but let's say they have $8 million for every school out there for supply money, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We take that and we allocate it to the individual school sites
Mhm.
using that 5,100, 510. And they get that money based on student numbers on their FTE. It's $123, I think, this year per unweighted FTE the schools get, because we built in that additional funds for the schools so the parents didn't have to buy the supplies and da-da-da-da-da-da.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So we allocate that to the schools. And we allocate it into function 5,100, object 510, mainly
Sure.
because we don't have time. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't allocate it to everywhere the school needs. So we put it there so it makes that number look really, really big. And then by the end of the year, it's not as big looking because the schools have gone in and moved that money around where they needed it. Do they need media supplies? Do they need these kind of supplies? Do they need this? It'll be large because your textbook allocations put into 5,100, 520. So that's your huge textbook number there. So that's gonna be in there too. Areas where we budget a reserve, like for FTE,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because we don't necessarily, we set aside any growth that we anticipate until we actually make the FTE.
Right.
Because you don't make it, you don't get funded, and the money's gotta come from somewhere.
Certainly.
So that'll be set aside in a reserve. So 5,100, 510 is kind of a catch-all, because we don't know where everybody wants all this money allocated. So we put it into there, and then throughout, and that's those budget amendments that go to the board
Right.
every month,
Mhm.
shows where that money's moved around.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I don't have the staff to do it, and the schools, you know, they have the summer to do it, to move their money around.
Certainly. Just to follow up on that, thank you, that actually clears some things up. To follow up on that, so I guess I'm wondering why, so for example, for 16, 17, 17, I mean, basically you said it looks really big and then it looks small at the end. So I guess I'm still a little confused, like why is it such a big number and why is so little spent? I mean, if the numbers if you need to give, maybe I'm missing something, but if work sites need flexibility, okay. The second,
I've got
third,
what you
yeah,
got.
yeah.
Where
Mhm.
are you?
You may not have what she has, so.
No,
No,
I
she
do.
does, she does.
Okay, I'll pass that out.
Yeah.
Okay, so, where are you at?
5,500. And again, I mean, I know that, Mr. Merrill, right? Merrill has done, I mean, I understand the district's position that it is not meaningful or fair to compare big budget versus
Right.
actual.
No, I didn't say that. It's not fair to compare beginning budget
Right,
versus actual. Ending budget versus actual, you can make
All the
some
comparisons.
judgment, you can make proper comparisons for the differences.
so I get, but we are where we are with the beginning budget, because
Is that
that's what
what's
was.
being used here?
Yes, that was the district summary budget. So using the district summary budget, I understand your objections. Putting those aside.
Go ahead.
I guess my concern and my confusion is if you're giving, maybe I just need to check my comprehension here. You're saying that you give them a lot and it looks big because you need to give the district school, it's a catch-all and it's a sort of here work sites, you figure out how to allocate it.
Correct.
Okay. And so you make budget big to give them flexibility.
Well, I don't make the budget big. I
Mhm.
put the budget in there because it's a budget out spot.
Proper budgets.
I'm not it's just a whole.
Well, a lot of money has been placed into it.
Correct, but it's
Yes.
budgeted money that they actually goes to those individual sites. They choose how they wanna move it around.
Okay, so what accounts for it winnowing down throughout the year then, I suppose, in budgeted versus, as you're refining the budget amendments, you land on every year a much smaller number. I mean, roughly it looks like, for example, 16, 17, it's 17.2 million. You landed, the work sites landed, I guess, on 4.5 to round up, or 4.49 million. And it's a pattern throughout time, so can you explain that pattern of spending, or what might account for that pattern?
The pattern stays pretty steady.
It
I
does,
mean,
but
it went
that's-
up this past year
Yeah,
because they had more money to spend. I mean, because this past year's when the superintendent he put additional monies in there this, in 17-18 to
Mhm.
alleviate parents having to buy stuff that should be the school's responsibility.
I,
So I don't know are you asking why does it continue
why
to
is
be?
it so big versus so small?
Because you're comparing what was in there at the beginning of the year, which,
That's part of
Which
it.
you've said
That's
is
part.
unfair, yeah,
Okay.
part of it.
I think what you're driving at is, every year, we don't spend the entire budget. You see a pattern, every year, we aren't spending the entire budget. So there's,
Because if you did, you'd be broke.
the consideration there is to determine whether we have funds that we need to be allocated back to schools. We need to note, is that percentage that we're spending, is it decreasing or increasing? Or is it staying close to the same?
Percentage of what?
My actual expenditure as a percentage of my budget.
Mhm.
So the determination is, are we spending proportionally the same each year?
Yeah.
Or are we spending, kind of show a pattern, spending less as a proportion or more of a proportion? Ideally, we want to spend over time the same proportion within, certain, very close to the same proportion.
Right.
If we're spending less, that means we're putting money into the fund balance and it's not going to the students.
Hold
If
on.
we spend
Say that
less of a
again?
proportion,
Yeah.
if we spend less of a proportion of the budget over time,
Mm-hmm.
if we show, for example, this year we spent 80%, the prior year we spent 81%, prior year we spent 82%, 83,
Mm-hmm.
now we're spending 80, and then next year, let's say we spent 90. That's an indication that we're not putting money back into the schools, absent some huge, what I would call a categorical that is,
Mhm.
that is there, that would make us roll forward money, and that's only happened once, well, it's actually when we got a lot of federal money. But
Mhm.
setting that aside, the point
Mhm.
is, you want to see that the percentage that you're actually spending each year of the budget is constant. It's not, if it's going up and up and up, then at some point you're gonna run out of fund balance and you gotta start letting people go, cutting your programs and things like that.
Right.
But if it's going down, 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 then there's a concern, there's a whole
Where's the
bunch of
money
money
going?
in fund balance, and where's it
Mhm.
going? Well, this year, it actually, you would have found that the proportion went down. That's why we had a higher ending unreserved fund balance.
Right.
And that's why you see the sheet in front of you where the
Mhm.
superintendent put a whole bunch of money into services.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said it early on, next year, it's not going to be surprising to me if he has to cut $2 to $3 million to be able to propose a budget to the board, given the kind of, if we don't get better funding from the legislature to cover these increased costs. This is, he took money out of one-time funds that's recurring.
Mm-hmm. And when did he do that?
We did it for this fiscal year, and that's what that first sheet represented.
Right. I think, and we'll need to pour over this information and think about it, but I think it's less a matter of you're not spending the entire budget or any such phrasing, and it's more a matter of where can we work together to find more money for teachers? Teachers are, the main the school district exists to serve Leon County's students. And whatever we can do to give the teachers the resources they need to feel valued and to support themselves and their families with dignity is what we should both be about. In fact, I believe that's what we're both about. And so we are undertaking this analysis to help y'all and help each other find the resources necessary to do better by Leon County teachers. That's all we're up to. That's all we want.
And we have done that analysis, and we have made a proposal,
Mhm.
which fits within our means. So
Okay.
if you have a counter proposal, we would entertain that.
I think as Emily said, that we're gonna take the information from today, because we didn't wanna come with a counter proposal without having this conversation first. Because we wanted to make sure that as we present a counter proposal, that it takes into consideration all the information.
Yeah.
Yeah. With that said, you know, we understand that there's a proposal on the table, and for point of clarification, I just want to make sure, it almost sounded as if it was a first best last offer, and I don't know if that's necessarily what the case was with the salary proposal.
We will respond to any counter proposal after we evaluate it.
Mhm. Okay. Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
And if it's outside your direct knowledge, just say so, that's totally fine. Since your materials and supplies versus, you know, instruction was, as you said, of course it would draw our attention, it's striking. Would you say that the budgeting practices that Leon undertakes are fairly standard? Like, it makes sense, I mean, as you explained it, it makes all the sense in the world to say, we stick the money there and schools do with it what they will.
I cannot answer for other districts.
Okay.
I would assume that they probably do, but you gotta understand some of the larger districts
Mm-hmm.
have 25,000 times the staff that I have.
But a comparable district would have a comparable amount of staff.
Correct, and
Alright.
I would agree that they probably budget the same way we do.
Okay.
You can't compare us to a tiny little district like Wacoa,
Certainly not, no.
you know, but I can't, like I said, I don't know how the districts do their budgeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, here's how other districts do their budgeting. So, I thank you for your candor and all the information you've given us, and you've given us a lot to think on, and we appreciate it. Just in the interest of transparency, this is where our heads are at. We wanted to see what comparably sized districts with respect to FTE, what their budgeted versus actual for 5,500 look like. So, and it may just be that y'all do have, I mean, I think what you've said about staff, that is a fair point, and Lord knows all public employees do way too much work with too few resources. But I'm just trying to contextualize Leon County here. And we can do more research, I'm happy to call around, I just wanna understand I wanna understand the situation, because I'm new here.
Well, I take exception to
Okay.
comparing how I do, or how we do our budget to, because we don't sit in their seats. We don't work at their districts, so
Mhm.
you're kind of indicating that,
You really can't compare budgeting district to district.
Okay, why not?
You can compare the final audit findings when an auditor comes in and says, you did this correctly or incorrectly. It's what the auditor says is correct, not what St. John's does, or Alachua does, or Okaloosa does. You
Right.
can get to the same goal a variety of ways. The CPA can do your taxes 10 different times. Your taxes are different than her taxes, different CPAs, they do it differently.
Certainly.
So you can't compare how they do it. You can compare when the IRS audits you. That's the comparison.
Okay, I mean.
Can I make a clarifying point, just to make
Certainly.
sure? And I'm not, this is not to say that the priorities aren't where they are, but what I wanna say is, even though you can look at the final result, the receipts tell what your priorities are. And that
Now, it
may
depends on
be,
what the receipt is. If the receipt is
What you
you
spend
have
the
to
money on.
buy something because Digital Classroom says you have to buy it, it's not priority.
but the point
They're
is,
telling you have to buy it.
but the point is, every district has the same charge from the state.
Same
meaning that-
obligations.
Same obligations.
and we meet those obligations.
We're not saying
We're
we're
not
Yeah,
not
but
saying
you're
that.
indicating that we,
No, I'm just trying to understand.
I know, that's the
because-
indication I'm getting. You're telling me this county does it better than I can because their numbers that, well, I would have to challenge and go sit with that district and see how they do it. Do they have 15 staff members or 5 staff members? Maybe they did, so that's another, this is
Which is
no.
Good question.
This is an unfair, you're throwing stuff out that's unfair. And that is
Okay.
unfair to me because I have worked my behind off this summer and every other summer. So,
Well,
no, she's.
I'm sorry.
No, I
picked
just, I
comparable
tell you.
sized districts to try to
But you still
answer
can't
that.
even do, if you wanna do a comparable size
Well, Leon's
district to
not on
see how
there.
much money they have or how much they spend on this area,
Mm-hmm.
that's different. But to take another district and compare them to how we do our budget here, that's not fair. Because every district out there has different budgeting staff, have different methods of how they budget.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes, they don't.
That's not my point. And I'm not speaking.
I think.
I mean.
Was not to necessarily do anything other than to reflect, it was just a comparison. It's not a charge of who. was
Well, no, and I don't get emotional very often.
Right.
The comparison is noted, however, it's not gonna get us to any additional dollars or understanding. So,
Okay, so take it for what it's worth.
yeah, we'll take it for what it's worth.
I think maybe we should take a caucus now. I know we have more to talk about, and I know we have information to digest. Is a caucus all right with y'all?
But before we caucus, though, I wanna make sure that we understand that we have 68 schools this year.
Okay.
And some districts listed may not have the same numbers of students in those schools, the number of DA schools. The
Sorry, I
comparison.
heard A rather than B.
Sorry, what I'm saying is the comparison, when we compare school systems, each school system has identified, or schools that have been identified as DA, right?
Yeah.
With the varying numbers of teachers, staff, sizes, et cetera. So that plays a role in terms of comparison. So I think it's difficult to compare when we don't know the makeup of the schools that are within the district. Size of pupils, et cetera, we get, staff, we get, but there's a difference. And then, what we adopt in terms of what we determine necessary for our schools. Each school system has the ability and the flexibility to determine what materials they wanna use varying. So I wanna make sure we put that out there. So when we talk about comparing what we do, it's not just budgetary, like what we do and how we run our district, whether it's HR or finance or payroll, et cetera, but how principals make choices on what they use to run their building and how they manage that autonomy that they're given. So I want us to keep that in mind, and so I just wanna make sure we share that.
And to that point, I want to make sure that we understand the questions. We're here to do what we're supposed to do, and that is
Right.
to bargain the best possible contracts on both sides.
Right.
If questions are asked, it is not, there's nothing intense. This is
No.
not personal, this is, we are just trying to understand. And I think the point that we're trying to make is just in the same way that a classroom teacher would reflect on their practices and look at other classrooms and other instructional things that teachers would do, that we're just asking that the district also look at other districts of like size to see what they do. And we can look at the differences that are in each one of those. We can find out how many DA schools they have.
That's a good point.
What
We'll
they
look up.
do with the materials. It's just a comparison piece, because that's what you do when you're a reflective person. So that's all we're asking is, can we just reflect on that? So,
Well, you can reflect on it, but I can tell you, I'm in most of these districts. How they budget materials and supplies doesn't get them anywhere with respect to, some of them have no ability to pay wages. Some of them are the richest districts in the state. St. John.
St. John's says.
So, I mean, how you budget one function will not get us anywhere closer to final goal of striking the deal. So,
Your-
we'll look at it.
Your point's well taken, but context is everything, but thank you.
I had the icon on my computer. That was nice.
we can definitely, extend it if you want to, but I'm sure everyone's schedules are pretty booked, so, we'll try to utilize the last 50 minutes we have.
And can I just say one thing, I'm sorry, prior to that, I just wanna make sure that, just so that everybody's clear, we have always been a group that talks and works things out, so I wanna make sure, because I felt like, from my perspective, that Naomi, you were very, so I wanna make sure that we understand that we value everyone in Leon County. Teachers, non-instructional staff, support staff, people that work in our offices, that help run us, regulate us, because without the support of everyone, we're not a good school system. So, I wanna make sure I go on the record and say that in front of everyone, that we value. It takes time to compile these reports, it takes away from just your day-to-day things. And so I wanna make sure I go and say that. So we do appreciate the efforts that you did and went through to get the documents, as well as for Leon Teachers Association.
And to piggyback on that, I think we can all agree that everybody within public school education right now, what we've been dealing with for the last 20+ years, well, things should be better than they are for all of us. So we'll just go ahead and leave it at that. With that said, would you like to?
I just wanted to,
cover a couple things?
I just want to briefly describe Neural's background. He's been a CPA for 30 years. He's on the Florida Finance Council now, which is made up of about 20 CFOs. And he meets and advises the Department of Education's finance staff, the Senate, whenever there's any bills that are anti-education teachers, finance. He's there on behalf of all of us, trying to make sure we don't get less money in the following years.
Thank you.
So he's works with a lot of districts and is an advocate for education and your side and our side, to try to make sure we get our fair share, which, as you mentioned, looks like less and less each year. And I think we're all here that we can solve for in the legislature.
Always appreciated Merrill's work and Naomi's, and they've always been very giving of their time and their knowledge. So, with that said, would you like us to start? Or-
Sure.
Okay. We'll begin with. Here you go, sir. First article that we're going to address is the 2107. The district's request to have some timetables on years of service. One of the things that we discussed the last time we were at the table is that the initial proposal was that within the semester that they were hired, that we had table talk that talked about somebody was hired maybe in the last 2 weeks of a semester, but it may not be enough time. So at this time, it says that the deadline to provide the documentation of experience is no later than the end of the first completed semester in which they were hired. Now, meaning that, and this is the part in terms of terminology, means that if you're hired in the first semester, you have until the end of the second semester to get your paperwork in, the first completed full semester that you were hired. That way, it doesn't go ahead and go much further than that. So it's straightforward, rather than limited to one semester. The other thing that we've kind of requested is that the Human Resources Department shall confirm that the affected employee that has received all necessary documentation to make the determination within 5 working days. So that when receiving the documentation, respond back out, we confirm that we have the documentation and we're here for credible source, and the district shall notify the affected employee of its determination regarding credited experience within 5 days of making that determination. So we receive it, you get a 5-day, within 5 days you tell them we've got it. Once you determine you're moving from pay level to 3 to 10, that they get a confirmation that they're at pay level 10.
Yeah. Yeah, Mary asked a clarified question, because she's the director of HR.
Yeah, one of the things that we find is that 6 months, a year later, someone will come back and say, well, I don't have those 3 years in wherever. How do you expect that we would know we have all of those part-time years? Is there a, just was curious about your.
Does that make
Because
sense,
we
see
may
what you're
get-
saying?
Yeah, we may get a, they may send in, let's just say, their sick leave, and they want to get their sick leave transfer, so they think that that is the documented, but it goes to benefits. It's not the years of experience that we need, it goes there, and they assume we have it, but we don't.
But they would receive, if you received what you needed,
Just let them
within
know.
5 days, they would have been notified that that you received it.
For the documents that we do receive.
Well, or I think the idea is that there are probably, like, there are some total of documents that are needed, right? And so the member is empowered to know, I'm not getting that call, something's wrong. I can go ask and say, what, you have what you need, what's going on? So I think that's, am I answering your question?
Yeah, I just, if there's multiple sites that they work, I don't want
That's
to
what
be-
that's what I'm
yes.
referencing. So like for myself, when I moved here, I came from Illinois, but I had worked in Detroit, Atlanta, and, one other place.
Right.
However, when I come in, the people who are completing my paperwork don't necessarily know that I've taught. It's incumbent upon me to send that paperwork to the school system to get filled out. But
That's all
Mrs.
I-
Nicholson and their staff don't know that Dina has taught in 4 other places. So how would she know within 5 days whether or not she has everything if she doesn't know the school systems? Does that make sense?
Well, but wouldn't you have, in an intake form, you could say something like, I have, these are the following experiences, you should look for me. Is that part of the paperwork? Like you have to identify, here's where I'm gonna be transferring stuff in from.
People do that, and in the
Yeah.
past in HR,
Yeah.
people lie. Because you have to wait for the confirmation, that's what I'm saying, so if you're waiting, I'm just saying, you
I
have to
just
figure
want to
that
make
out.
sure that I understand.
I think the idea is that, I mean, at least my understanding was that, from Todd said, was the hope would be that, you would only contact them when you received confirmation. Like,
If
yeah.
they give us 3 years and they have 8, we just confirm we have
The
3.
three,
And
that sounds
they would
right.
know that there's a gap.
If they want 5 more,
They have to go for it.
Perfect.
I just wanted to make sure that it
Of
wasn't
course,
that.
no, appreciate the question.
Thank you.
On the back side is 2118 method of salary payment. And as far as the 10 and 12, the employee will be provided with an option to access their pay from one or more financial institutions without necessary of opening an account at that institution. We did not change that from your request to eliminate that part from that language. Down below, we do have an additional part on B, which talks about 10 and 12-month employees will be paid their annual salary. And it shouldn't say in either 12, it should say in 12, so that either needs to be deleted as well, in 12 equal payments. That was the language that you had requested. Based off the numbers of people who actually take 10-month checks. And that it would be, if I understand correctly, that if you are a current employee on 10-month checks, you will be able to continue on those 10-month checks. It's just all new hires would be defaulted into the 12-month pay, correct? Okay. And then at the end, all deductions, healthcare and LCTA dues, deductions for approved vendors will be taken out over 12 equal month payments concurrent with monthly paychecks. So that every paycheck would be, there would be no variation, meaning that people would know what they were made monthly and what they were getting monthly, and that it wouldn't be the little roller coaster that happens during the summer. For those two.
No, we don't do healthcare.
Healthcare is in 10 payments, I think it's different. It's not spread apart like salary throughout the year.
Well, at the same time, okay. We'll wait till.
We understand what you want.
And we understand what you want in terms of the 12, but as I said last time, there are some people that feel that they've worked 10 months and they want to be paid from their pay, in that 10 months. That they don't want to necessarily have to wait to be given what they've already earned 2 months later. That would be what the 12-month option basically is.
say you didn't take it out?
In A,
Yeah.
We accept it, you
Oh,
should
yeah,
just right
thanks.
there.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yes, I think so.
I wanted to know what that meant.
Yeah.
Okay.
You agreed to, you were saying that.
They
that's what
agreed,
you-
I misunderstood.
And, yeah,
We took out.
in principle, we agree
In
with that.
principle.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense.
It did 1 year.
don't-
Back in the 70s.
All I can think of is that, you know, when most people were paid by a check or something else, and maybe they didn't wanna open a bank account, they would have some fees or charges to it, because then you make less because of those fees and charges, that was a way to work around it. Just not sure.
I know there was a concern, and I know you all talked about that last time, because there were some people, but I don't know if it was here. They were asking about the healthcare, why does it not come out? Why could not we, there was a question from you all about why we
I
couldn't.
did get around to asking.
So,
Well,
we'll,
it has to do with, you'd have to set up two different deduction times, because your 10-month employees don't have the July and August.
That's right.
It's tied to the pay.
Yeah, the 180
right,
days and the
right,
11 month, yeah,
right.
so we would have, that as part of it.
Yeah.
We would have different
Deduction.
deduction
Mhm.
schedule for some employees versus other employees.
Right.
So we'd have some at 10 and some at 11.
She doesn't, I don't know if she understands there's two pay types.
I was gonna ask how many employees are on 10-month right now?
122 out of the teachers out of 2,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We also have less than
300.
10 employees that are paid 11 months.
Right, but for teachers, so I was trying to
It's
get her to
10, 12.
understand.
Yeah. It's one of
10,
two
12,
choices.
and so
We don't,
pay type 1 teachers don't get their first check until September.
Because 10 is for teachers.
So they don't, but they selected that.
Okay.
That was their choice, so, but in July and August, because they're not paid, their deductions for healthcare. You can't take out what they haven't been paid, yeah, so
Yes,
that was,
that's understood.
you were looking confused.
Well, I was I was wondering about the sort of, I think I'm following about that there are deductions, the deductions would be a nightmare given how many different populations of employees you have. But there's nothing on the insurance company's end that would prevent you, I mean, it's
No.
not that, it's more the internal administrative nightmare.
that's correct.
Okay.
I think all the other language that has been crossed through was passed across.
Hang on just a second, I'm looking at D again.
Sure.
What letter?
Did we said something, you know?
Yeah, we struck D,
Yeah.
and then someone mentioned we needed, so it'll be different.
That's why the 12 deductions was thought to.
If she, Dina's the payroll director, if she marched through it, taking it on her. Did Dina provide those markers to you? I would think she did. She's got to administer the program. She,
We have a question, and so I'm just gonna let you know, we're gonna have to check with Dina
double check.
because I had a bracket when I proposed this with a question mark on the second sentence in D, 21 ATD, whether we're still gonna do the checks that way. We may have,
It did look like you guys were going strictly the intent, so the intent may not be to go to direct deposit.
no, that's not the intent. The intent is how would we handle paper checks? And so Leonard is having a little bit of heartburn, and I'm okay with that. My payroll director proposed this, but I probably want to double check with her and say, like, are you sure?
Right.
yeah,
If
'cause
she's
I
sure,
had a-
I'm sure.
I had a bracket with,
So, point of clarification for you guys.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to your response.
We'll
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah.
And I just wanna make sure I don't ruin payroll straight through.
It was your strike.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
I know,
that's
that,
how-
that's what I'm
we'll be
saying,
on
may
it.
have been, a little.
We want to be sure.
Gotcha. All right, the next response to the proposal. Yes, our team has all these already, so. deals with 1602.
Yeah,
This is about the sick leave one. It's very similar to the one where you wanted years of service, credible service in a timely manner, that the years of credible service for this were very similar. Like, we've accepted in principle 120, but if you take a look down below, in the same way that we did with the other, as far as some verification pieces, one higher. Our county school district employees shall receive written notification of the above deadlines that govern transferring sick leave. LCSD shall also inform new hires of the above deadlines at new employee orientations, and Human Resources will confirm that it has received all necessary materials to make its determination within 10 working days of receipt of the effective employee. So, meaning confirmation that it's been received.
All right, I think the last sentence in 1602, it says new employee shall be provided written notification of this deadline.
Yeah, that doesn't give a timetable necessarily. If you'd like to merge the two, then
Yeah.
we could do something along those lines.
Benefits would have to.
Can we just do a point of clarification on this one?
Sure.
Is that HR does not manage this information, it's the benefits department.
yeah, but we'll-
I wanna make sure we put that.
Sure you don't want
Any other questions? Here you go, sir. Thank you. At this time, I think we still needed more discussion as to what was a reasonable effort to timely put rates in. We talked about it briefly at the table, and rather than just come across with a counter, that was something that we would still have to discuss. We figured we would discuss it in principle now, to maybe determine what the language would be.
All right, we have a counter that basically, we talked around different areas in schools, and we're basically just defining it as 2 weeks. That's what folks are doing.
Okay.
And you can evaluate that.
And I know that when we had discussions,
Right.
we talked about being.
Yes, and
And again, if it's 3 weeks in a day, there's no, I see from personal experience, parents now, if you have it, like, oh my God, she has it, he doesn't have it, you know, they're getting a little emails, but.
so, just a question about this. So, let's say that someone takes a test and it's the second to last day in December before the semester ends, that the 10th day of 2 weeks would still be while you're on vacation. Are we expecting those to be done? Are these working days? Is it a way to make it 10 working days, or something that would make it to where someone, if spring break was in the middle, then that would mean that you have to work through your spring break to get some grading done or something? So just want to make sure that we have that discussion.
Good, all good points. Yeah, we could define it so everybody's on the same page.
And that's what the other ones too, we just think about that. Within 5 days, like for the benefits, the
Right.
HR department, just make sure they're working.
Mhm.
So we just need to find the parameters of that too.
Of course.
Okay.
If it was, even if it was within 10 days and it still was a trigger, the intent was just to make sure that we didn't have, the communication was there, and that we didn't have those oopsie daisies a year and a half later, and I haven't received notification, or I'm not being paid properly, that kind of stuff. So,
All right.
so we will take that into consideration and come up with some numbers and talk about. Next one is the, make sure I can get this separated, ROTC one. There you go, sir. But as far as the ROTC one is concerned, we don't have an issue with our, like, paying people supplements. the issue, that's not necessarily an issue, but one of the things that we want to make sure that we're talking about is that last year we had an intent to address supplements as a whole and clean them up and include other supplements. So, the idea is there a middle school drama program that's out there somewhere? Because there was an issue that that was a supplement that wasn't being paid because it wasn't in it. And so sometimes those pots of money that are intended to be divvied up for some folks, that sometimes like this, the ROTC was in that pot, the academic one, I think is what it's called. So our question is more, what other programs are not being identified specifically that could also be guaranteed for the work that the people are doing and some level of consistency and compensation? Where at one school they might be getting 3, another one 2, another one 1. So that's our request at this time. And we will have some inquiry with our bargaining unit as well. Like that.
So let me just make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. Under the umbrella, for those of you who don't work directly in HR, under the umbrella of academic coaches, I think the title is, there has been a flexibility for principals or autonomy. Principals can then say, I want Paula to be the drama teacher after school once a month for the year. I want Scott to do the, and they call them academic coaches and they break down the amounts. I wanna make sure I'm hearing you correctly, Scott. What you're asking us to do now is to go back and say, possibly say, under the academic umbrella of coaching, what supplements are paid out of there? And is there money that's paid out of there that can be reallocated to cover the ROTC supplement that has been placed on the table, and any other supplement that you're not, that needs to be created?
The idea is to guarantee that if someone is doing work at one school and they're doing the same work at another, that there's consistency for the things that those people are doing. Just
Is it
like-
because it's not, the title's not the same?
I
I'm just
don't
trying to
know.
make sure.
Look,
I'm just trying to get,
when we talked last year as a supplement committee, there were a couple of issues that came up. 44% of the people that receive the supplements aren't necessarily part of the bargaining unit. The other part was that when it comes to the supplements, that how that is divided up within that academic coaching is dependent upon how the school divides it up. And so there's a certain level of consistency that's missing. And one of the things that we had discussed was that we would get together and review the supplements to see which ones are kind of antiquated, which ones have
Right, that's what I'm trying to make- that's what I'm trying to make sure.
Which ones need to be added to the supplement list so that we are capturing what's going on in our schools.
44% of people getting supplements are not in the bargaining unit?
According to the data that was shared last year. Now, if you go through the proper procedure
Like
of,
coach or?
it could be coach, it
All
could
the
be,
above.
and all the above. So, the contract reads to that every, and we'll get to that one, that all supplements are a year long. Everyone's supposed to have equal access to those supplements at the beginning of the year, notification of who has them. If it can't go to instructional staff at that school, it is supposed to be distributed throughout the district to other instructional staff that could take on that responsibility and then move outside the bargaining unit.
I'm just trying to get clarification.
I'm sure.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, the academic umbrella that all principals have the option to disseminate or use or give out, they all use it differently. What I'm thinking is, what I'm hearing you say is there, you started off by saying, is there a drama?
Mhm.
Okay, I don't know.
Right.
What I'm saying is that one you're saying could possibly be needed to be added to the list?
Added to the list, but not necessarily reducing the other one.
Right,
So,
and I'm not, and I just wanna get clarity on what was going on. So people do say you're a drama coach and they give you the academic supplement. So what I'm saying is, you're saying call a spade, but also make sure that the funds that are allocated for supplements, how are we doing that across the board, and then can there be some more consistency?
Which brings us to the other side of that page. I think there's a. Which kind of addresses some of those things about the openings and postings and some additional things just to make sure that there's a certain level of transparency. I will let you know that there has been pushback from administrators that they don't want to share some of the information, because they feel that it is not their job or responsibility to share what people are making for doing the work that they're doing. So they don't want to necessarily say that so-and-so's got 3 supplements and this is how much more they're getting. I don't know if that's because that's gone through a transparent process of using the supplements to begin with, and people have not been able to go ahead and apply, but it's just, there's been some pushback.
Well, it'd be easier if you have a public records request to give it to the custodian, not the principal, and they will respond. Who makes what, everything's public. So that would be easier instead of school by school by school.
But the contract reads the administrator, so, as an
So I guess just to follow up on, I take your point, Leonard, but, so are you saying that the district is aware of what the administrators do at their work sites and that the records custodian could give us that information if we but ask that custodian?
No, when you say the district is 1 million people, so.
That somebody's in charge of knowing that these, I mean, I guess what I hear Scott's concern is being is that it would make our lives a heck of a lot easier to just ask the public records custodian to do. Absolutely. We'd love to do that. But I guess the concern is, we just want to get the information and we weren't sure that because it's so decentralized, who would know?
It's not decentralized.
Okay, it's not, okay, good, all right, sorry.
And this
Must
is
be a
where it
newbie,
comes
this might be a
If
newbie
you
problem.
do the public record request,
Yeah.
we gotta tell you what people make,
Okay.
except for now. Everybody else is public.
Mine's a secret.
I want
Thank you.
Oh, okay, I understand. So I'm asking about the posting, not the amounts of the supplements themselves. Of course, the public records custodian would know. Never mind, got it, sorry. Thought we were talking about, I thought you were implying somebody's job was to track whether things were posted.
I mean, the easiest. We're doing just run a report.
That's what I said. Keep checking on that.
Allowing
Oh,
me to.
delete
it,
look
Chris.
like he was in-
Sorry, I was.
Yeah, this is a problem in a lot of districts on, really, sometimes head football or baseball coaches. You have some big time player move to town, and this is saying you're gonna give the bargaining unit employee priority consideration. Is that what we're saying, if we have?
If we're bargaining for instructional staff, we prioritize instructional staff.
All right. Well, I just know first in from most towns, coaching, the high-end coaching are, it's the best qualified, believe it or not.
Well, maybe the consideration is to make the supplement a sponsor and the boosters get their coaches. I don't know. I don't know how to deal with it. I just know that we're bargaining the instructional staff
Okay, well,
contract.
And they would have to have the appropriate coaching certificate. So that's, sometimes it's very skill specific.
right.
And then the last one is, yes. Is the contract language that has been proposed for 1501. And not that we're against it in principle, but in terms of where we are right now, this contract language, I think it was always understood that it wouldn't be paid. And in terms of the addition of it, at this time, we'll just put it this way, at this time, we're still considering it an advisement. But at this time, we're saying eliminate.
So we know we're doing it? Or you're okay with us not giving you supplements, but you want, at this time, you want to read it in language?
No, at this time, we know that when you have a supplement, you're supposed to not get paid for your supplement, you're on leave. That is just what it is. I'm not sure why it has to be in the contract. If someone's not there, they're not getting paid.
You're saying, what I'm hearing is, to me, common sense. If it's unpaid leave, it's unpaid leave, whether it's a supplement or,
Yes.
because you're all not getting paid, you're not getting paid, so it includes.
Why do we need contract language for it?
Well,
For the supplement.
As
piece.
Mary
You could do
speak
that.
to it.
There's also hourly individuals, and when the assignment for the supplement is set up, if there's no hours that particular month, that they're like OPS, if you will, those individuals expect that they're gonna get the supplement just because they didn't have hours. So it's not just your, so when they, so for instance, they have an $18 assignment out there and there was no supplement, they have no hours that particular month. There's an expectation that they will get that supplement when they haven't worked that entire month.
Okay. For point of clarification, so we're adding contract language off of the employee's expectation?
It's practice.
I can give you a real-world example where we had an elementary school teacher that was the math coach after school, and she was receiving a supplement, and she was on a maternity leave. So while she was gone, another teacher took on that responsibility for her, and they had an agreement that the girl who was getting the supplement would give it to the other person. She never did. She refused to do it, and it turned into a big mess. Eventually, she got letters from district level people that you did, you entered in this. So for me, as a building supervisor, if it's in the contract language, we spend a lot of time going round and round. So from a real world point of view at a school level, if you're not working, then you're not entitled to the supplement. That would have solved that.
We've even had lead teachers, department chairs who were out
Right.
for
Somebody
medical
else is doing it.
and then but the principal said, and they felt like they could still manage it from home. Like, they were at home doing other things for whatever reason, but they could still be lead teacher or team chair and get the,
My thought is by not addressing it, the expectation upon that member is that they get it. So,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
we'll, based off the input, consider it.
I will say, if it's okay, I've been working with Ms. Howell in payroll to try to identify those through the payroll process so that it flags those as well. If there were no hours.
About how many people, I know it's an impossible question, but like in a given year, how many people take unpaid leave who also get supplements?
I wouldn't have that. We have
Yeah.
a lot of pregnancies, it's, yeah. It's in the law,
Yeah, duly noted. God bless you. Yes. No, but everyone should have this, guy takes care of those meetings. Thank you. I'm gonna copy hers. Oh, right here.
Scott, we have one, that we didn't have typed the last time about breaking service.
She wouldn't give it to me. Did you notice that?
Okay.
She
I'll
gives
give
it
it
to
to
her.
Can you provide some example as to
Oh,
what seems?
Sorry.
I guess it's,
Oh, the rate
if
concern,
someone,
was that?
if someone is hired, there's a lot of issues in the district. They're hired, they're non-renewed, they come back in September. The question is, in some districts, are they probationary? Because they're beyond the pre-planning? Are they in their second year? When do they start their second year, basically, or third year? If it's a third-year teacher and they're non-renewed, they get picked up in October. At some point, we have to have a date to say that everything's the same. They keep their sick leave, they're not probationary, to define the parameters of what is a true break-in service. And we do hire people back. I think it hurts the employee to start at 0 and become probationary again.
And then the other end of that is, we have teachers who may not be reappointed or choose to, for whatever personal reason, like they thought were a change of life, and then they don't. And those, they're non-reappointed or they resign in May or June during the reappointment process. They're on 12-month pay, so they still get a check in June, July, and August, and then they're picked back up. They either start the year off at pre-planning. We have teachers this year, I know of 3 who said they should now be placed in the new salary schedule because they had a break in service. Well, you didn't have to go get re-fingerprinted, you never lost a paycheck, you're still in that same flow, so you're being reappointed for the upcoming year, if you will. So it tends to be that, and sometimes that way they were doing it on purpose to leapfrog other people on the salary schedule. So what we're saying is, it would be fair, some bargaining units say November 1st, by October 20th, if you're picked back up, it's still the same. Okay.
So people will purposely being non-reappointed?
No, they would resign,
Oh.
or they made a choice to resign, but then they got picked back up. They had a life change. I know 2 people. One guy was getting married, didn't get married, didn't relocate, got picked back up in August, but there was a break in service, so I should be on the new, you should be able to honor my years, which would then, and
So for instance, he had 3 years with the district, he leaves, he severs. And then he thinks those additional 3 years where other teachers sat without those incremental, what, on the matrix, that they look at thinking in terms of a step. That's just your hiring. That's for the initial hire. So that would have given him 3 years of credit had he not severed.
Right, we
So-
agree that that's an issue because we have been putting in performance pay last week.
So,
It was originally
LESPA and 1010 also are other bargaining units. It's November 30, and I think this has been the practice, it's just putting it in,
okay, so it has been the practice.
my understanding.
but it's not been, it's not written anywhere, so it gets to be, the dates and days have shifted. So this year, our first year in HR might have been November 10th, the next year might have been November 1st, the year before that might have been, we just need to codify that. We need to say, this is the date, if you're rehired, reappointed, you're on the same wherever you are supposed to be placed.
Any further questions? Taking into consideration.
Okay.
There was a question that I did have, if there's more, we can continue. But, in terms of the compensation package that was offered, there were no exclusions in the way that it was offered, as far as I could tell. It was just numbers on the page, and so does the 2,186 employees that would receive that compensation package include all incoming employees or employees that were hired over the last 2 years that the concern of leapfrogging is all about?
I just assumed it would be if you're teaching this year and you're here, you get a pay increase.
I just want to make sure that we have an understanding that the concern is leapfrogging and that the ones that have leapfrogged will continue to have that advantage.
No, I mean, I'm not, Without going there and figuring out who they are,
Okay.
there's nothing that, on our side, if it's a pay increase and you're a teacher, you get a pay increase.
Then I'm just my question is then, how are we addressing leapfrog?
Okay, so let's go back. I thought what we had proposed to you all was that 0 through 4 years was coming on the same. Okay, thank you, Mary.
Yeah, that piece.
Okay, this is what he's
For new
referencing.
hires.
For new hires.
So his question, what if they're,
I don't recall seeing that.
Yes, this was,
here's a good question, so we have a discussion.
yeah. Yeah.
If someone came, let's say, September, brand new. Let's say we did it this way, they came in September. Well, this is before we even agreed to this, so if they come in September and we hire them,
Mm-hmm.
they get that pay increase. If someone comes after September, after ratification, let's say,
Oh,
something
okay.
about this, well, how do we handle those? That's new people coming in. They'll just be placed on the schedule to what we agreed to. So if you were newly hired this year, in September prior to this, you're there and you get that pay increase, but if you come in, let's say we settle this today, just for discussion's sake. If someone gets hired after today, they'd be put on that schedule. So we've got two people in the same year hired brand new, treated differently. And we need to figure out how to,
And you
I
also
just
have
thought
individuals that were hired ever since we finalized the new schedule, that if the leapfrogging is taking place and someone's making $1,000 more than somebody that has been here for 20 years because they came in the last year or two,
I don't know if you can fix that.
my point is, it's been shared that we're addressing leapfrogging, and I want it to be known that we're not addressing
Well,
leapfrogging.
we can, we're still bargaining. I think the language for footnote on the salary schedule has to be people coming in doing X amount of experience so they can done. And that's, the year is the tough part. Say it's 2, and that would ensure someone coming in with 8 years goes to 6.
And I want to make it very clear that the document that I received last time, and I think it was on the table, had numbers on it,
Right.
but we did not see a schedule that showed us the model.
Fair enough, we're not done yet, but we mentioned we do want to address, discuss, and come up with a sweet spot that addresses leapfrogging. Sometimes it's not a number, it may be a year, and it may just be language. Like those who come in following, lose 2 years, and those 2 years could.
For new hires.
I don't know how you go back and,
I understand.
but I do think we need to address it, and it's probably not a salary proposal, it's probably in language, or in conversation on board, for new hires.
So let's be very clear, we're not asking anyone to lose anything that they have gained to this point.
Right, we aren't either, we're trying to fix the compounding,
Right.
and we just,
The best way to address leapfrogging is to put money into salaries so no one gets leapfrogged.
Say that again? I wanna make sure I heard what you said.
You heard me.
No, I wanna make sure I heard what you said.
The best way to address leapfrogging is to put money into performance pay or into salary adjustments, market adjustments, whatever you want, so that when someone does come in, the people that are here, that have invested their time in Leon County Schools, are making at least what's on the schedule or more, so that no one gets leapfrogged.
they still would.
No, they would.
Yeah.
For example,
That was in every district, they did.
but here's, and so let's go through the math part, just in how I see it, and I may not see it correctly, so correct me if I'm wrong.
Go.
If someone comes in and they're making $40,000, right? And the next level up is a difference of $860 or $1,200. If you give someone a salary increase more than that, or $1,200, and the next person comes in and they go from maybe 10 to 11, and the difference, they're gonna get placed there and they're still making the same amount of money as the person. They may not be on the same placement because when they came in, but the salary of the person that's invested their time will be making as much, if not more, than the person that comes in. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And I don't know if I have the math wrong, but I think I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Well, it's different because you're gonna have three sets of people if you do pure performance pay. Effective, highly effective, and then needs improvement, who traditionally should get nothing. So say they have needs improvement 2 years, that person's gonna be leapfrogged by everybody.
And we understand that. I think what we're trying to say is we're addressing we want effective and highly effective teachers in the classroom. As long as effective and highly effective teachers are not being leapfrogged, then we've accomplished what we're supposed to do, right? That's why the point, of course, needs improvement, but it's on more cold.
I think what would help facilitate have this conversation in more concrete terms is an information request. So I think it would be helpful for us, do you guys already have this information? Bargaining unit, information, name, position, worksite salary, supplements, and data fire?
Do, but it's the way Skyward reads it and who's FRS and who's years of service and start date, it's interesting.
We would like to
Because
work
it's-
with you to refine an information request so we can answer that question.
We'll respond to any requests with documents we have. We have no problem with that. I'm getting great detail lately from FAA. 82 items. And could you please put it in Excel? Which some of my clients do and do not have this. So, we'll give you what we have, and we have no problem.
Thank you.
All right, we're kind of late. Do I get with you on these?
Yes.
You got my card, call me, cell phone, office, 24 hours.
And just for point of clarification, just that the notification was all communications be funneled to me from now on.
Yes.
Dealing with anything like
Yes.
that.